Hey folks, Lenny Lawson, the car guru, and this is the day that we do the Gateway Teen Driver Experience at my dealership, Gateway Ford and Gateway Nissan in Greenville, Tennessee. And the last time we did this was, that was back in March. We had about 120 kids, plus a bunch of straggler parents that hung around. Guess how many we have for today? 12. Now, you could say, well, Lenny, aren't you very upset? Well, not very upset. The way I look at it, that's 12 young people that I have the opportunity to influence in a positive way and maybe say something that will save their lives in the long run. So, how can I feel bad about that? No, I think it has something to do with the fact that it's July. People are on vacation, parents have less control over their kids than normal. At least they feel that way, because during the school year, they're a little bit more in control of their agendas. They know more what's going on days like, or summer days. Kids, they don't want to break away from the fun to come listen to me, especially come listen to something that their parents want them to listen to. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Why are we here today? We're here to talk about, well, let me give you a scenario. Okay, so you bought your house 5 years ago, and you get transferred to another locale. You got to sell your house because you got to buy a new one. Realtor comes in and said, well, we need to do an appraisal, market evaluation. Let's see what this thing will bring right now. So they do an appraisal. And you paid $450 for the house, and now it's worth $350, and your mortgage is $450 still. How's that going to make you feel? That difference between what you owe on your house and what you can get out of your house, we call it negative equity. I never have really liked that word that much because equity is usually good. Equity is what you own. But if you put negative in front of equity, then it means that's how much you are in the hole if you sell your house. So in other words, you will get paid for your house, $350,000, and that won't pay off your mortgage. You're going to owe an extra $100. Would that work for you? Well, see, that's happening big time to people in the car business right now because a lot of people paid up for cars during the pandemic, and now they're wanting to trade. And when they come into trade, many times they're seeing this negative equity. Or, well, one of the favorite terms in the car business is being upside down. And if they're really upside down, we call it they're buried in the trade-in. You don't want to be buried in your trade-in. So how do you avoid that? Well, there are several key things. Number one, you don't finance for 84 months. You try to finance no longer than 60. You try to pay at least 15% down, but 20% down if you can. Or you lease a car and drive it for 3 years and then get a new one. You never have any negative equity that way unless you want to get out of the lease early. Then you have a ton of negative equity. Well, it's not called negative equity because on a lease you don't own the vehicle, but you are on the hook for the remaining payments. So you're going to have to stroke a check if you want to get out early on a lease. But if you own it, what are your options? And let's say that you don't have to trade. You want to trade, but you don't have to. Then my recommendation is that you don't trade. You ignore those feelings, those desires, those dreams of driving through the mountains in a brand new Ford Mustang with a convertible top down. You keep driving that GMC Acadia until you are at a break-even situation. And you can monitor that. You can look up Kelley Blue Book and see where, what trade-in value is on your vehicle at any point in time and compare it to what your actual payoff is. Hopefully at some time, if you graph that out, you put your payoff on one line and your actual cash value on another, hopefully those lines will intersect. Eventually, the value of the vehicle will exceed what you owe on it. I know it will on the day you pay it off. But you know that also. So when should you trade? When the lines intersect, and not a day before. Unless you can pay a substantial amount down and your needs change drastically, then you trade. Now, this is a new car dealer telling you this. I trade with people every day that are upside down in their trade-ins. Why don't you talk them out of it? Well, because that's not my job. I'm in the business of selling cars, trading for cars, and then selling them, fixing cars. That's my business model. It's not talking everybody out of trade. Oh, sorry, folks, you don't need to trade right now, because you know what they'll do? They'll go to another Ford dealer, another Nissan dealer, and they'll trade. And so, no, we don't spend a lot of time talking people out of trading. Although, sometimes when they get to Lenny's office back here in the museum, I have done that, and will do it, especially if the people are real needy. In other words, they really don't understand what's going on. They don't know what to do. And they say, Lenny, what would you do? And I have to tell them, I just hold on to what you got. We don't want to. Well, you should, though. And that would be the best financial decision to make. Now, emotional decision, your needs change. You had another kid, and you already have two, and you need more room for car seats and for strollers and whatever else. Those kids can really help you fill up a vehicle. I know. We had 3, and now we've got 6 grandkids. And we take 3 of them with us just about everywhere we go. So, yeah, it takes a lot of extra stuff in addition to our stuff. And then I have to put the bicycles on the bicycle rack on the back. Yeah, I know what it's like to overload a vehicle, and I know the value of room. And is there a financial trade-off there? Room or money? Sometimes there is. I acknowledge that. Does it make sense to trade on a vehicle that you're upside down on if you have a fairly substantial, let's say a mechanical issue? Like, let's say your air conditioning goes out. Should you trade? How do you decide whether to do that? Or if it's an engine, which would be probably the worst case scenario. How do you decide whether to trade or not when you have a lot of negative equity? And what do you do about it? Because you really don't have the money. I'll give you some ideas here in just a minute. Okay, so you go to the dealership and you've got a blown head gasket. That's not good news. And you know it's going to cost about $3,500 to fix it. You don't have $3,500. You say, what if we trade it? Well, that is an option. What happens is the dealership looks at your vehicle and they say, okay, what is this vehicle worth if it didn't have a blown head gasket? So they come up with that number. Then they talk to the service advisor or service manager. What's it going to cost to replace the head gasket in this thing? $3,500. Okay. So they subtract that. And then that's what you are getting for your vehicle. But I'm paying for it anyway. Yes, you are. You're not getting out of paying for the blown head gasket, unfortunately. But that's the way it works. So you're $3,500 less than the actual cash value, but you owe another $3,500 above that. So now you are actually $7,000 in the hole on this trade-in. Can you trade? Yes, you can. If you have good credit, you have adequate income to cover an increased monthly payment. You already said you don't have any money, so can you finance all of that into a new car? Yes, you can. And sometimes that absolutely makes wonderful sense, especially if you buy a vehicle that you can finance at 0% interest, and or it has a $4,500 rebate on it. Because the way I look at that rebate is that it's an opportunity to help me with this financial dilemma where I'm $3,500 to put on a blown head gasket and $3,500 in the hole If I didn't have a blown head gasket, I've got to overcome that $7,000 somehow. $4,500 in real money from Nissan really helps me do that. Now, if I didn't have a blown head gasket, and if I didn't have this negative equity, then all of that $4,500 would be used to reduce the purchase price of the vehicle. I'd be financing less, and I'd have a much lower payment. Yes, you will have a lower payment if you don't have this hanging on your neck, this problem. But you do have it hanging around your neck. So you have to accept reality and say, okay, what is the best way to handle this? Because let's say that you don't trade. Where are you going to get the $3,500 to fix the blown head gasket? Well, you can borrow it from your credit union or a relative. They're going to charge a higher rate of interest. Well, the relative might not. Or somebody might give you money. But let's say you don't have those options. No banking relationship. What are you going to do? You're going to get one of those high-interest credit cards. You're going to charge it on a credit card, and you're going to pay a little bit each month, and you're going to be paying 28% interest. Or you can buy a new car, finance the whole thing at zero, or take the $4,500 rebate. In many cases, they'll do zero plus $2,000 cash, and then that might be the best deal. You just got to get the finance manager to run a couple different scenarios for you. So if we finance this at zero and take the $2,000 rebate, what's my monthly payment? Or if I take the regular bank rates, the lowest rate I can get, and finance at that rate and use the $4,500 cash down to reduce the amount that I'm financing. See, what most dealerships are going to do, especially the bandits, and they're around, they're not looking at this for the best thing for you to do. They're looking at it from the perspective, which way can we make the most money? That's the way we're going to steer the customer. And see, that's just not how I operate. Never have. Not in my business. My dad didn't do it that way. We always tried to make the best decision we could for the customer. Do we want to make a profit? Yes, we do. But am I going to steal the money from the customer by lying to them or not telling them the whole truth? Heck no. I will not. Have I ever had an employee that did? Yes, I have. And when I discovered it, they got fired. If I could prosecute them, I prosecuted them. But I haven't had that problem in the last 25 years. That was a long time ago. I'm a lot more careful these days. So yeah, that's an option. Okay, let's look at a worst case scenario. Let's say you're $20,000 upside down. Same problem, blown head gasket. Now you have $23,500 worth of negative equity. The $20,000 negative equity and the $3,500 repair bill. What now? Well, the dealership, it's really going to be the sales manager. He's going to look at that deal and he's going to say, okay, how much will this customer's credit and this vehicle that they're wanting to buy, how much will this carry? Can we get 120 to 125% of MSRP financed? Maybe they can. It's very possible. But is that the best thing for you to do? Here you really have to really milk every possible udder on that cow, your financial cow. Is that a bad example? I think it's a great example. You ever milked a cow? I have. By hand, yeah, into the bucket. My Aunt Amy taught me how to do it. She had 2 cows, and I got to milk one of them. I did not enjoy it. The whole time I'm doing it, there's like 3 cats rubbing against my legs and the bucket and wanting to get a taste. And I was sweating. It was like 105 degrees in that barn. But yeah, if you've got a relative, if you can borrow that $3,500, do that. Don't jump into a new car. I understand the lure of it, but how long will it take you to pay the $3,500 back? Maybe 18 months, 2 years. I mean, if you get into a bigger car loan, you're paying exorbitant payments for 84 months. That's not a good financial decision. It's best just to do an amortization schedule. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. You look at 2 different loan scenarios. The $3,500 versus a new $35,000 vehicle with another $15,000 added onto it, or whatever it adds up to be. and see what that is for 84 months and see how you stand. I'd much rather trade cars when the lines intersect. It just makes more sense, or at least when they're close. And I understand the lure of a huge rebate and how the salesperson can really talk that up and make it sound really good. I can promise you this, if they're doing the math, it'll look good. They'll show you payments. They won't show you amounts. They won't show you the total of your payments or the total purchase price, including payments and interest. You don't get to see that until they actually print out the bank contract. And by then, you are all in, ready to sign because you've been there for 6 hours. You're ready to sign that paperwork. You don't even read it. They're supposed to disclose all of those boxes across the top. The last box is the big box. That's the total investment after 84 months that you would have paid for this car. That is a really big number. I have seen it scare off some customers before. Oh, they're totally sold. They can't wait to get out of there. Then I'm doing a proper disclosure, and they get to that line and they go, "What?" And then they say, "No, wait a minute. We got to think about this." It's the best thing you can do. Have them print that out and then don't sign it. Say, "I want to take this home with me." You want to do what? "I want to take this home with me and study this contract." "We don't normally do that." "Well, do you want to sell the car or not?" That's what it's going to take. "I want to take the contract home." Oh, my goodness, they'll push back on that. But that's what you really need to do before you jump in with both feet into a scenario like that. But see, most people, they just lay down, they give in, and sign the paperwork, then they get out of there. And, there's dealerships, too, that when they don't give you actually copies of the paperwork, they want to retain that for a few days, and then they'll send it to you. No, thank you. I want copies now. See, they want the 3 days to pass by, give you time to settle in. They don't want to give you a copy of the paperwork. And when they put it on one of those flashcards, yeah, they'll actually put your paperwork on a flash card, one of these little USB things like I have in my desk here. They'll want to put your paperwork on that, and they knowing that if you're 85 years old, you probably don't know what that is, and you may not even have a computer that you can put it in and see your paperwork, and that's just deceptive. That's how they hide the things that they don't want you to see. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I am back. We just got a new Nissan rep, our sales rep, this past week. And he's been in Japan for his entire life. And he hired by Nissan, came over here and got involved in some Nissan product planning. He's a really nice guy. We have somewhat of a language barrier that we're going to have to overcome. His name is Naotaka Kumagawa, but he said we can call him Nao for short. Thank goodness. But he is a really nice guy, and I think he'll be a good addition. Now, that's the opposite of what Ford did. Several years ago, Ford made the brilliant decision to outsource all dealer contact with sales and service representatives to a third party. And that third party, if I know this is hard to believe, it's Ford Motor Company, right? Dearborn, Michigan. They outsourced it to Mexico City. Now, all of our communications were by phone or, emails and stuff like that. And they don't understand. These were all fairly new English speakers. Now, I don't know about Naotaka Kumagawa. He's, not totally fluent in the East Tennessee, but at least he's going to be sitting in front of us. We won't have to communicate with him by phone. Sometimes when you're sitting across from somebody, body language matters. Body language is a form of communication. And, it's just harder for me to understand somebody with a real heavy accent over the phone. If I can watch their lips moving, then for some reason or other, that's a little easier. Yeah, sometimes companies do brilliant things like that. And to make their dealers, really to reduce their overall costs. Are we going to do that with AI? Probably. I call a lot of dealerships just for dealer trades and many other reasons, and it's AI answering the phone, transferring phone calls, making service appointments. Most larger dealerships now, you don't talk to a human when you want to make a service appointment. No, you talk to AI. They might say that their name is Karen, but you can tell. It's pretty easy to tell. It's not all bad because they get right to the point. What I don't like is they try to fake that they're a real person. Just go ahead and talk like a robot. I can deal with that. As long as you understand and I can make my service appointment, I don't care if you have a nice French accent. That doesn't matter to me. Does it matter to you? Oh, and I get these spam calls. So I've started doing something. If I don't recognize the call or the number and it doesn't say this may be spam, I'll answer it, but I won't say anything. And if I don't say anything, they don't say anything because the AI doesn't know that you answered. They don't say, hello? Is anybody there? Hello? Hello? No, they don't do that. They just wait. Wait for you to set them off. And so if I say hello, this is Karen. And I say, take a hike, Karen. And then I hang up. I know it's rude, but that's okay. She can take it. She's tough. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. If you have any questions, you can always call me, 423-552-2020, or send me a text message. And if you want a copy of the My Car Guru guidebook, it'll help navigate a lot of those things that you do with your car as far as interacting with car dealers, buying, selling, trading, servicing. It really kind of gives you a roadmap and a way to deal with those yahoos, especially if they get a little sideways and try to take advantage of you or not print out your paperwork or lie to you about what's included in the monthly payment. This is a way to fish them out. And you can still be nice and do it. And they won't even know what hit them. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.